Welcome, the Lord's chosen. Some people ruin themselves trying to compete with someone who isn't even competing. That line sums up exactly what's happening around you right now. The moment you stepped into your true energy, the whole atmosphere around you shifted, quietly, effortlessly, without you lifting a finger. And suddenly, people who were never paying attention before are now scrambling to copy your rhythm, like they're rehearsing for a performance you didn't audition them for. It's almost funny, because they don't even realize they're exposing themselves. They're trying to match a frequency that doesn't come from hype, drama, or performance. It comes from the way you think, the way you move, and the way you've learned to survive. Here's a fact most people never acknowledge. Humans are wired to imitate what intimidates them. When they can't understand the source of someone's power, they try to recreate the surface of it. That's why their attempts always look a little exaggerated, a little offbeat, a little goofy, because they're reacting to an energy they don't have the internal foundation to carry. It's like someone trying to copy a lion's roar when they've only ever meowed their whole life. They try, sure, but the sound comes out sideways. What makes this moment even more incredible is that you're not out here trying to impress anybody. You're not pushing, performing, or begging for recognition. Your energy is simply calibrated differently. Your growth didn't happen on the timeline they expected, and now it's shaking up their sense of identity. They see you evolve, they feel the shift, and suddenly they're scrambling, studying you like a manual while pretending they're naturally built like this. This is why the whole scene looks so wild. You're operating from an inner ecosystem that's stable and self-built, while they're operating from borrowed moves and recycled confidence. And the more they try to keep up with you, the more obvious it becomes that you're not in the same league, not in the same lane, and not powered by the same source. So let's get into it, because the way they're trying to match your energy right now, whew, it's giving comedy, confusion, and accidental self-exposure all at once. Number one, they're exhausting themselves because they're responding to a frequency you were born with, not a skill you learned. Some people think matching your energy is like copying someone's style or habits. They assume if they walk like you, talk like you, or mimic your confidence, they'll somehow show up on your level. What they don't understand is that your energy isn't something you picked up from the world. It's something that was already in you long before you knew how powerful it was. You didn't study a formula. You grew into yourself. You didn't rehearse your presence. It developed through the way your mind works, the way your emotions operate, and the way your spirit responds to life. That's why they tire themselves out. They're trying to echo something that isn't coming from the surface of who you are, but from the core. Your energy has layers, and most people only see the outer one. They see the confidence, but not the internal battles you settled. They see the calm, but not the resilience you built. They see the direction, but not the self-awareness you fought for. When they try to match what they see, they miss everything that actually makes it powerful. And because they're copying the final product instead of the internal process, their version always collapses under pressure. They can imitate your tone, but not your inner balance. They can imitate your moves, but not the mindset behind them. The truth is, your frequency was shaped by things they avoided. Your clarity came from experiences they never confronted. Your presence was shaped in moments they ran from. So while they're busy studying your last move, they don't realize your energy comes from how you understand yourself, not how you perform for others. And that's why they look drained while you look natural. You're flowing in something authentic, something you didn't borrow, something that's synced with who you really are. They're fighting for something that isn't theirs, and that fight alone exposes the difference. They can keep trying, but without your inner foundation, they'll always fall short because your energy isn't a costume they can put on. It's a frequency they were never built to hold. Number 2, they keep failing because they're competing with someone who isn't even participating in the race. When people try to match your energy, they forget one essential truth. You're not playing the game they think you are. They're out here sprinting, pushing, pressing, forcing every move, like they're locked in a competition that has a finish line, a medal, and an audience waiting to clap. But you're not even on that track. You're moving on a different timeline, guided by a different motive, powered by a different understanding. And that's why their efforts collapse before they even get close. They treat your presence like it's something to defeat or earn, when actually it's something to witness. They're judging themselves against a standard they don't understand, and that alone guarantees failure. They chase intensity, but you're steady. They chase hype, but you're grounded. They chase approval, but you're self-sufficient. When someone is measuring themselves against a version of you that isn't built for comparison, they can't help but look desperate, confused, or flat-out goofy. They're fighting a battle with the wrong enemy and using the wrong weapons. What makes it even deeper is that you're not trying to stand out. You're not on a mission to outperform. You're not waking up every day thinking, how can I be better than everyone else? You're simply aligned with yourself, and alignment has a presence all its own. When someone operates from alignment, it reads as power, even when they're doing nothing dramatic. But when someone operates from insecurity, it reads as panic, even when they're trying to look calm. So they keep failing not because they're weak, but because they're misplaced. They're chasing a shadow of something they don't have access to, and no amount of copying or forcing can bridge that gap. You can't compete with someone who isn't competing, and you can't outdo someone who isn't measuring themselves in the same currency. In the end, their failure is actually proof of your uniqueness. The moment they realize you're not in their race, they'll either stop running or finally start walking their own path. Until then, the whole performance will keep looking like what it is, a frantic chase after something that can't be caught, because it was never meant to be. Number 3, they misuse your blueprint because they copy the results without surviving the process. When people try to match your energy, they act like it's a recipe they can steal from the finished dish. They look at the outcome, your confidence, your calm, your presence, and think they can just copy those ingredients and get the same flavor. What they never stop to ask is this: how did that dish get cooked in the first place? What fire did it sit in? What pressure did it withstand? What mistakes shaped it before it became something they now want to imitate? Your energy isn't built from the highlights they can see. It's built from the silent struggles they never witnessed. It's built from the nights you questioned yourself and still showed up in the morning. It's built from the moments you were afraid and acted anyway. It's built from boundaries you learned the hard way and lessons you paid for with time, heartbreak, or humility. They skip all of that, grab the surface, and wonder why it tastes flat. Copying results without surviving the process is like wearing someone else's armor without training in it. It looks impressive until the moment real pressure hits, and then it falls apart because it was never conditioned on their body. They can repeat your words, mimic your posture, fake a tone, but they can't replicate the internal discipline that gives those things meaning. Without the backbone underneath, it's just decoration. And this is where it gets painfully obvious to anyone who's paying attention. When you've earned something, it sits on you naturally. When you're faking something, it sits on you like a borrowed coat 2 sizes too big. That's why their attempts come off as forced, loud, or unstable. They're chasing a maturity they never built, a clarity they never fought for, and a self-trust they've never tested. The deeper truth is that your energy can't be reverse engineered because it isn't mechanical. It's organic. It grows through trial, reflection, failure, and honesty. It's shaped by choices they haven't made and courage they haven't discovered yet. So they'll keep misusing the blueprint, keep building hollow versions, keep collapsing under pressure, and keep looking puzzled as to why it never hits the same. Meanwhile, you keep moving, not because you're performing, but because you're living the process every single day, and no one can copy a journey they haven't walked. Number 4, their desperation exposes the imbalance. They seek validation from the same world you've outgrown. When people try to match your energy, what they're really chasing isn't you. They're chasing the approval of a world that still controls them. They want to be seen, recognized, applauded, accepted, and celebrated because those things still feel like life or death to them. Meanwhile, you've already passed through that season. You've already learned that applause can't hold you steady, that attention can't build you, and that validation is too unstable to build an identity on, and that difference shows immediately. Desperation is loud even when it's silent. It leaks through the forced smiles, the exaggerated confidence, the copy-paste behaviors, the sudden transformation that feels more like panic than growth. When someone is still tethered to external approval, every action becomes performative. They're not acting out of truth, they're acting out of fear, fear of being overlooked, forgotten, irrelevant. And when that fear collides with someone who no longer plays that game, it creates a spectacle they can't hide. You, on the other hand, move from a place of internal stability. You don't need the crowd to tell you you matter. You don't need strangers to crown you. You don't need likes, praise, or imitation to feel alive. That independence is what they're actually reacting to, even if they can't articulate it. Your calm challenges their chaos. Your certainty highlights their insecurity. Your self-trust exposes the cracks they've been covering for years. The funniest part is that their desperation isn't a weakness, it's information. It reveals exactly how imbalanced their foundation is. When someone wants to mirror you so badly, it's because they haven't discovered their own center yet. They're borrowing energy they can't generate, borrowing identity they can't sustain, borrowing confidence they can't source from within. And because they're building on borrowed ground, the whole structure shakes even with the smallest breeze. Meanwhile, you keep walking like nothing heavy ever touched you, not because life spared you, but because you learned how to stop outsourcing your worth. That's why their efforts look like strain, and yours look like ease. One is chasing approval in a world that keeps moving the finish line. The other has already stepped off the track entirely. And that gap? No amount of copying can close it. Number 5, they can't match your energy because yours is built on inner alignment, not outer performance. Most people don't realize that what they call energy is usually just performance. They think if they raise their voice, walk a certain way, throw in some confidence, and act like they're unshakable, they can create the same effect someone else has naturally. But real energy isn't an act. It isn't choreography. It isn't charisma you can buy or copy. Real energy is the visible result of internal alignment, and alignment can't be faked because it's a deep conversation between who you are and how you choose to show up. When you're aligned, your thoughts, emotions, and actions stop fighting each other. Your purpose stops wobbling. Your presence stops needing decoration. You don't have to convince anyone because you've already convinced yourself. That kind of coherence radiates, even when you're quiet, even when you're still, even when you're doing nothing dramatic. It's like a calm hum under everything you say and do, and people feel it even if they can't name it. The people trying to match that can't, because their inner world is chaotic while their outer world is busy pretending it isn't. They patch insecurity with bravado. They mask confusion with noise. They cover doubts with sudden bursts of confidence that collapse the moment life pushes back. Alignment is like stacking bricks on solid ground. Performance is like stacking cards on a windy table. It might look impressive for half a second, but it will never last. And this is where the humor slips in. You can always tell when someone is performing because they get tired way faster than you do. They're sweating to look like they've mastered life, while you're just living it. They bend, they stretch, they exaggerate, they overcompensate, and you're sitting there wondering how a human can burn so much energy trying to seem effortless. Inner alignment also carries honesty. When you're aligned, you don't need to pretend. When you don't need to pretend, people trust you without being told to. When people trust you, they feel safe around you, drawn to you, influenced by you, and they have no idea why. Meanwhile, the imitator can't create trust, because trust can only grow from authenticity, not imitation. So they can keep trying, they can keep acting, they can keep rehearsing, but they can't enter a space they've never built inside themselves. Your energy isn't something they can copy. It's something they have to earn. And until they do, every attempt will look exactly like what it is. A big, enthusiastic, very goofy shortcut that goes nowhere. Number 6, you trigger them because you remind them how small their world becomes when they stop growing. Some people get uncomfortable around you, not because you're too much, but because you expose something they've been avoiding, their own stagnation. Growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, personal, and invisible to everyone, except the people who aren't growing at all. When they see you expanding, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or even just in confidence, it shines a light on the walls they've been circling for years without noticing. When someone stops growing, their world gets smaller even if their ego gets louder. They stop learning, stop reflecting, stop taking responsibility, stop stepping into uncertainty, and eventually they stop seeing possibilities. Life becomes a loop. Comfort turns into confinement. And when someone like you walks in, carrying forward momentum they no longer have, it feels like disruption. Not because you're judging them, but because they're judging themselves. This trigger isn't about envy or jealousy most of the time. It's deeper, it's grief. You remind them of the version of themselves they never invested in. You remind them of dreams they shelved, courage they declined, skills they avoided, changes they thought they'd get to later, and later never came. So when they watch you evolve, it's like staring at a mirror they can't break, and they react in the only way they know how: mimicry, panic, forced growth, and sometimes even hostility. The funniest part is that they think they're reacting to you when they're actually reacting to their own arrested development. They try to match your energy, but what they're really chasing is the feeling of being alive again, of being capable again, of being in motion again. But because they didn't build that muscle, everything feels foreign, heavy, and frankly, a little tragic, comical to witness. Meanwhile, you keep growing not to impress anyone, but because growth has become your default state. When progress is normal to you, you stop expecting applause and start expecting clarity. When clarity becomes normal, you stop being shaken by people who can't keep up. So when they get triggered, remember, it's not about you being overwhelming. It's about them realizing, maybe for the first time, that staying the same isn't neutral, it's shrinking. And no one likes facing that truth, especially when it's walking around in front of them looking calm, centered, and absolutely unbothered. Number 7, they look goofy because they're borrowing confidence instead of building it. Confidence is one of those things everyone wants, but very few actually earn. And when someone hasn't built it from the inside out, they try to loan it from the outside in. They copy tone, posture, swagger, humor, boldness, anything they think will convince the world they've got it together. But borrowed confidence always shows its seams. It creaks under pressure. It wobbles when questioned. It collapses the moment life stops applauding. When you build confidence, it usually comes from surviving yourself, from making mistakes and not folding, from speaking up even when your voice shook, from learning, failing, adjusting and showing up anyway. That kind of confidence sits in your bones. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to compete. It walks quietly into a room and people feel it without being told. Borrowed confidence, on the other hand, is like someone wearing jewelry they can't afford. It glitters, but it's artificial, and everyone can tell it's not theirs. They overcompensate, overperform, oversell. They laugh too loud, act too bold, pretend too hard. And the irony is that the harder they try, the more transparent the act becomes. Confidence that's real feels calm. Confidence that's fake feels frantic. This is why they look goofy next to you, even when they're trying their absolute best. You're not performing, you're inhabiting yourself. They're not inhabiting anything. They're auditioning for a role they haven't rehearsed. And audiences can always tell the difference between someone speaking from truth and someone reading from a script. Another thing people miss is that real confidence can coexist with humility, softness, and uncertainty. You can be powerful and gentle at the same time. You can speak slowly and still command attention. You can admit mistakes and still be respected. When someone's confidence is borrowed, those combinations feel impossible, so they avoid them altogether and stick to the caricature version. So when you watch their attempts and can't help but smile, it's not cruelty, it's clarity. You're witnessing the gap between someone who has walked through fire and someone who has only watched it on social media. They can keep borrowing all they want, but confidence can't be rented. It can't be mimicked. It can't be downloaded. It can only be grown. And until they do that work, their energy will always look like what it truly is. A loud costume that doesn't fit, worn by someone still learning how to stand in their own skin. Number 8, they mimic your moves but never your timing, and that's where they keep embarrassing themselves. Timing is the silent skill no one teaches and no one can copy. People can watch what you do, but they can't feel when you do it. They can imitate a gesture, repeat a phrase, echo a style, but they can't step into the rhythm that governs your choices. And that gap between action and timing is where their imitation always cracks. When you're aligned with yourself, you move when it's right, not when it looks impressive. You speak when it's needed, not when it looks bold. You hold back when restraint is strength, and push forward when courage is required. That instinct isn't learned from tutorials or observation. It's built from awareness, maturity, and deep familiarity with your own mind. It's the kind of skill that works even when you're unaware it's working. But the imitator, they're stuck playing catch-up. They see a move after it has already created its impact, and then they try to reproduce it in a moment that no longer fits. It's like dancing to a beat they can hear but can't feel. They're always half a second off, and that half second is everything. What would look powerful in the right moment looks clownish in the wrong one. What would feel authentic when it rises naturally feels forced when pulled out of a checklist. This is why their attempts backfire. They think results are created by actions alone, so they copy actions. They don't realize results come from a combination of intention, context, emotion, and timing. Without those, their moves float in empty space, disconnected from meaning, and everyone can sense it even if they can't explain it. There's also a deeper truth. Timing is tied to identity. When you know who you are, you know when to act, because you know why you act. When someone doesn't know themselves, they act at random, chasing applause, chasing relevance, chasing anything that feels like purpose. So when they embarrass themselves, it isn't because they're incapable. It's because they're imitating someone whose internal clock they can't access. You can't mimic instinct. You can't mimic self-knowledge. You can't mimic the harmony between thought, feeling, and action. All they can do is repeat motions outside of meaning, and that always shows. Meanwhile, you keep moving in time with yourself, calm, steady, unbothered. Because real presence isn't about looking good. It's about being in tune with your own life. And no one can copy that, no matter how hard they try. Number 9, they can't grasp that your energy is expensive because it was paid for with experiences they avoided. People love to talk about energy like it's something you can pick up off a shelf or copy off a screen. But the truth is, real energy has a price tag, and most people can't pay it because they're not willing to walk through what it costs. Your energy didn't come from inspiration. It came from endurance. It didn't come from watching others. It came from surviving yourself. Every time you felt alone and kept going, that paid into your presence. Every time you made a choice that scared you and did it anyway, that paid into your clarity. Every time life pushed you down and you stood up without turning bitter, that paid into your calm. Every time you swallowed pride, spoke truth, broke a habit, or chose growth over comfort, that paid into something they can't see, but everyone can feel. When they look at you, they only see the surface, the confidence, the composure, the direction. What they miss is the invisible ledger underneath. They miss the tears no one saw, the mistakes no one heard about, the discipline no one applauded, the self-confrontation that humbled you, the courage that rewired you. Those experiences are the real currency. Without them, what they're trying to mimic is like trying to quote wisdom they haven't lived. They avoided the storms. They avoided responsibility. They avoided honesty. They avoided discomfort. They avoided growth. And because they avoided all that, they also avoided the transformation that comes after. So when they feel drawn to your energy, they mistake attraction for possibility. They think they can skip the price and still get the product. But life doesn't work like that. You can't cheat your way into depth. You can't cosplay maturity. You can't rehearse resilience. You can't download courage. These things are earned in real time, with real consequences, with real self-awareness, and with real sacrifice. That's why their attempts always feel cheap next to yours. Not because they're weak, but because they're underfunded. They're trying to spend a currency they never earned. And until they're willing to walk through what you walked through, they'll keep looking like someone wearing a luxury coat they found in a thrift store, impressive at a distance but falling apart up close. Meanwhile, you carry your energy like a veteran carries stories, quietly, naturally, and with a weight no imitation can hold. Number 10, they perform strength while you carry resilience, and that's why the gap can't be closed. Strength is something people can act out. It's loud, visible, dramatic, easy to imitate. You can throw on a posture, raise a chin, speak bold, pretend you're unfazed, and convince a crowd for a moment that you're built like stone. But resilience? Resilience can't be performed because it's not about how you look when things are calm. It's about how you behave when everything is falling apart and no one is watching. When someone performs strength, they're showing you the highlight reel. They're giving you the edited version, the confident line, the tough expression, the "I'm fine" tone. But you can always tell when it's performance because it breaks under the smallest pressure. A challenge comes, a contradiction appears, a failure hits, and suddenly all that strength melts into panic, defensiveness, or silence. Resilience is different. Resilience is built in the long stretches no one posts online. It's built in the decisions you made when you could have quit and didn't. It's built in learning from mistakes instead of hiding them. It's built in staying soft enough to grow and tough enough not to collapse. It's not flashy, but it's unshakable. It moves slowly, steadily, and with purpose because it's been tempered in real fire. This is why they can't close the gap no matter how hard they try. They can mimic the pose, but they can't mimic the history. They can copy the tone, but they can't copy the endurance. They can shout, but they can't stay standing when the noise dies and life asks something deeper of them. There's also something ironic and almost humorous about it. People who perform strength burn themselves out quickly. They get tired, stressed, overwhelmed, defensive, brittle. Meanwhile, resilience feels almost peaceful. When you've already been through storms, everyday weather stops feeling like a threat. When you've rebuilt yourself once, you stop fearing collapse. When you've confronted your own weaknesses honestly, you stop being shaken by anyone else pointing them out. So the gap isn't about superiority or competition. It's about foundation. One is a mask you can buy and wear for attention. The other is a muscle you can only build by living. And that's why, even when they try their absolute best, even when they push until they strain, even when they pretend until it hurts, they'll always look like they're acting next to someone who's simply lived. Number 11. They're uncomfortable around you because you operate from clarity, while they operate from comparison. Clarity has a way of unsettling people who've built their whole identity on measuring themselves against others. When you walk into a space knowing what you stand for, what you want, and what you won't tolerate, it shifts the atmosphere without you trying. Your decisions make sense even when they're simple. Your presence feels steady even when you're quiet. Your direction is visible even when you're not explaining it. And for someone who lives in comparison, that kind of internal coherence feels like exposure. Comparison is a noisy way to live. It keeps people constantly checking their reflection in everyone else's success, confidence, happiness, or progress. They don't know who they are because they've outsourced the definition of themselves to the world. So when they meet someone who isn't checking anyone else's score, it rattles them. It highlights the emptiness beneath their chase. You, on the other hand, aren't guessing at yourself. You're not polling the room. You're not rewriting your purpose every time you see someone doing better. Your clarity comes from honest self-inquiry, from setting boundaries, from learning what actually matters to you instead of what impresses others. That kind of clarity is rare, and rare things always make the unprepared uneasy. The humor in all this is that they think the discomfort is about you being too confident or too different, when really it's about them feeling like they're standing on a shaky foundation while you're standing on bedrock. They're so busy watching everyone else's journey that they never started their own, and being around someone who has is like watching a documentary they didn't sign up for, but can't stop sitting through. When clarity speaks, it forces people to confront questions they've been dodging. What do I actually want? What am I working toward? Why am I chasing someone else's version of success? Why do I feel invisible unless I'm competing? Those questions can't be answered with borrowed energy or copied moves. So their discomfort isn't aggression or jealousy. It's awareness they're not ready for yet. And until they stop comparing and start building, being around someone aligned, grounded, and self-defined will always feel like standing under a light they're not ready to step into. Meanwhile, you keep moving with purpose, not to intimidate, but simply because clarity has become your way of life. Number 12. They study you like a manual because you disrupt the systems they built around pretending. When someone has spent years building a version of themselves meant to impress, protect, or avoid judgment, they create systems, scripts, masks, behaviors, triggers, responses, performances. Those systems keep them safe because they never have to show what's actually underneath. They can stay in control as long as the performance works. But when they meet someone who isn't playing that game, it short-circuits them. You walk in without a script. You show up without a mask. You speak from honesty, even when it's simple. You carry yourself with a grounded ease that can't be rehearsed. And suddenly, their carefully designed systems fail them. They can't categorize you, they can't predict you, they can't outsmart you, they can't mimic you cleanly. So they hover, they analyze, they dissect. They study you like you're a textbook they forgot to study for. What they're really studying is the absence of pretending. They're staring at something they've never experienced, a person whose external behavior matches internal truth. That destroys the whole structure they've been living in because it proves something they've been denying. Authenticity isn't weakness, and honesty isn't chaos, and presence doesn't require theatrics. The funny part is that their studying only deepens their confusion. They take notes on behaviors but miss essence. They copy patterns but miss purpose. They imitate movements but miss meaning. It's like reading the ingredients list without ever tasting the food. They can repeat the steps and still end up with something that doesn't even resemble what they wanted. Meanwhile, you're not even aware you're being studied. You're simply being yourself. And that alone is enough to expose how much pretending they've been doing. When someone stops pretending, it becomes a mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable for people who have been living in costumes for too long. This is why they get rattled. This is why they look goofy. This is why their attempts feel hollow. Because authenticity is not a technique. They can't learn it from watching you. They can't reverse engineer it. They can't cheat their way into it. Authenticity can only be built by removing the mask, not copying someone else's face. And until they do that, they'll keep studying you, chasing you, copying you, while missing the one lesson you can't teach. Stop pretending, and you'll finally stop looking like you're acting. Number 13. Their need to match your energy shows they've never discovered their own. There's something deeply revealing about someone who feels pulled to mimic another person's energy. It's not admiration, it's not inspiration, it's a confession. It says, without speaking a word, I don't know who I am, so I'll borrow who you are until I figure it out. And that truth shows up in every exaggerated move, every sudden shift in personality, every dramatic burst of confidence that doesn't quite land. When you discover your own energy, you stop needing reference points. You stop needing templates. You stop needing to look around for permission or direction. Your presence becomes a byproduct of self-understanding, not self-consciousness. You act because it aligns with you, not because it impresses someone else. And when someone grows like that, it radiates in a way no imitation can reproduce. But when someone hasn't discovered themselves, they feel like they're walking through life without a compass. Everything feels uncertain. Everything feels like guesswork. Every interaction becomes a test they might fail. So when they see someone who seems sure, grounded, authentic, or powerful, they latch onto it the way a ship in fog latches onto a lighthouse. They think if they can copy the light, they'll feel safe too. The problem is that identity isn't something you can photocopy. You can't borrow it. You can't rent it. You can't imitate it long enough to make it yours. Identity grows slowly through honesty, mistakes, curiosity, and courage. It grows when you stop asking, how should I act? And start asking, who am I when no one is watching? Most people run from those questions because they require patience and discomfort. So their frantic need to match your energy isn't about you at all. It's about the void they're afraid to admit exists inside them. And the deeper irony is this: the more they chase your energy, the further they drift from their own. They become a mirror reflecting someone else, instead of becoming something real. You, meanwhile, don't have to chase anything. Your energy is an extension of you, not a costume you can take off at night. And that's why it touches people, anchors people, inspires people, and sometimes unnerves people. In the end, their copying is actually a sign of hope. Because wanting what you have is the first spark that can lead them to building what they never realized they could have on their own. All they have to do is stop copying long enough to start discovering. Number 14. They look goofy because your presence makes imitation impossible. You don't project energy, you shift environments. Most people think energy is something you show. They treat it like a spotlight they can switch on and off, like a performance they can rehearse and repeat. But what they miss is that real presence isn't projected, it's catalytic. It changes the temperature of a room without effort. It moves conversations without forcing them. It steadies people without lecturing them. It's not something you broadcast. It's something you carry, and people feel it before they even understand it. When someone has that kind of presence, they don't need to raise their voice or posture or invent confidence. The environment responds to them because their internal state is coherent, honest, and grounded. That coherence interacts with other people, and it shifts the whole space. This is why some people walk into a room and everything feels different even though they haven't said a single word. Now imagine someone trying to imitate that. They can copy actions, but they can't copy impact. They can imitate gestures, but they can't imitate atmosphere. They can try to act calm, but they can't create calm. They can try to act powerful, but they can't make other people feel safe or seen or respected just by existing. Those effects come from depth, not decoration. So when they try, it's like watching someone fake gravity. They jump, they flail, they strain, they exaggerate, and the environment stays exactly the same, because you can't fake something that comes from alignment, experience, honesty, and self-awareness. The result is always the same. They look goofy, not because they're ridiculous, but because they're chasing something that cannot be copied from the outside in. The funniest part is that you're not even doing anything extraordinary. You're simply integrated. Your mind, emotions, and actions are aligned enough that people feel it like a low-frequency vibration they can't tune out. And when someone without that integration tries to replicate the effect, it's like trying to imitate a storm by shaking a watering can. So they can keep trying, they can keep studying, they can keep rehearsing. But until they build the internal structure that naturally shifts environments, their imitation will always stop at the surface. Meanwhile, you continue walking through life, not projecting energy, but altering space, effortlessly, unmistakably, and in a way no copycat can ever reproduce. When you zoom out and look at all of this, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. What people are chasing isn't your personality, it's your alignment. They're not drawn to how you act, but to how you've grown. They're not copying you because you're cool, but because you remind them of a version of themselves they never learned how to build. And no matter how hard they imitate, no matter how loud they perform, no matter how many moves they borrow, they can't replicate something that was earned in silence, lived through chaos, shaped by honesty, and maintained by self-awareness. Your energy isn't a trend. It isn't a costume. It isn't a trick. It's the outcome of choices, endurance, clarity, resilience, identity, and growth. It's the invisible work that shows up as visible presence. And that's why they look goofy, tired, desperate, or out of sync. They're chasing a destination without walking the road. Let this be the reminder hidden underneath all the noise. You don't have to compete, perform, or imitate anyone to be powerful. You don't have to explain yourself to be understood, and you definitely don't have to chase energy when you can build it. Keep being aligned, keep being real, keep being you, because that alone is more disruptive, more inspiring, and more magnetic than anything they can imitate. If this spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, drop a comment with what point hit you hardest, and share it with someone who needs that reminder today. Your support keeps this content alive, and I appreciate every single one of you. Stay blessed always.